The film begins with Dan as an employee working in a car showroom, and all the people who know him know that he is a simple, peaceful man and able to persuade even the most stubborn client to buy any car. When he returns home, we learn that he is the ideal husband to his wife, Jessica. This is his daughter, Nina, a journalist, but a bit rebellious and in love with a guy in another country. Dan, of course, did not approve of this relationship because she had only seen him on social media. And this is Kyle, a professional video game player. But Dan was against him playing these games because they are full of action and violence, and they were always fighting. Then we come to the youngest child, Max, their little son. Kyle was always telling his father that he was studying at his friend Samir's house. But this was not the truth. He was paying him money to go into his room to play and open a live stream and play his favorite game. Frankly, the boy was very skilled and professional, and all the young people watching him were talking about his talent in the game. At that time, Dan was taking Jessie, his wife, out to the amusement park. This was to celebrate their 18th wedding anniversary. He took her to the amusement park every year because it was the place where they met and where their love was born. Jessie tells Dan that she loves him because he is a traditional and ideal person. She also tells him that she wishes to travel with him and her children one day, because Dan always refused, arguing that he was afraid for them and did not like to travel abroad. He tells her, "Let's finish the fun first, and then we'll see about this travel idea." After they finish all the excitement and playing, Dan playfully gives her a quick kiss. But he notices a group of young men laughing at them. This is because they had taken a photo of him kissing her on the carousel. Dan gets annoyed and politely asks them to delete it. But the guy rudely tells him, "There's no way that's happening." The guy was bold because he knew Dan was weak and avoided problems. He embarrassed him further in front of his wife and spilled their soda on him. Dan gets upset here. Do you think he'll do something? Yes. He takes his wife and leaves. The whole way, Jessie kept trying to comfort him with words, but Dan did not open his mouth the entire trip. When they get back home, he goes into shower, upset. But as soon as he saw his little angel, Max, he forgot everything. The next day, Jessie was at the gym, and there she meets Gwen. She learns that Gwen has just moved to the city and tells her she is here to stay close to her lover, who she discovered left her, and she found out he lives here. Jessie strikes up a friendship with her, and they spend time together. She tells Gwen that her husband, Dan, is very afraid for them, to the extent that he only goes from home to work and from work to home. Furthermore, he never likes to travel because he fears trouble. She then says, "Should I tell you a secret? I'm fed up with this life, and I want to take the kids and Dan and travel abroad." Gwen gives her her card and tells her, "If you manage to convince your husband to travel, call me, and I'll arrange everything for you." And she leaves. At the same time, Dan was with Max, buying a few things from the supermarket, but he notices a man watching him, but he pays no attention. However, after a while, he sees the refrigerator glass, and the man approaches him and suddenly attacks him. Dan asks him, "What are you doing, you crazy person?" "I'm holding a child." But the man pays no attention and attacks him. We are surprised that Dan blocks all his attacks and even hits him while carrying his son. He finally manages to knock him to the ground and defeat him. He goes to pay for the diapers and leaves with Max. He rushes home, goes inside, puts his son down, and goes to the stairs. He opens a secret compartment and pulls out a bag containing weapons and money. When he looks at his children's passports, he finds them expired. He calls an old friend he knows and asks him to forge passports for him and his family. His friend tells him, "No, I don't need any trouble." Dan tells him, "I'll give you $500,000. He says, "How much? Come and take them right now." Dan packs his children's and wife's belongings and leaves the house immediately. He goes to his daughter Nina at the newspaper and learns from her colleague that she quit her job 3 months ago. To find out his daughter's whereabouts, he gives her bribe money. When he goes to her, she is surprised that he found her location and asks him, "How did you find me?" He tells her, "There's no time to explain. We have to go get your brother and mother and leave quickly." He makes her understand that he is preparing a surprise for them. He goes to Samir's, his son's friend's house, and learns from him that Kyle was lying to him and wasn't studying at all, and that he was playing there the whole time. But he didn't have time to argue with his son. All he cares about is leaving now. He goes to his wife Jess at her work and tells her, "Forget that woman. I have a surprise for you. We are traveling right now." Jessie is happy and can't believe they are finally traveling. As they drive off, Dan notices a black car waiting for them. As soon as the bus passes in front of them, he quickly reverses and hides. The gang goes in to look for him from one side, and he slips away from the other side. He tells them, this is a shortcut for the road and time. Indeed, he manages to escape from them, and none of his family members felt anything, except for the little boy, who was smiling at him in the mirror, as if saying, I caught you, master. A little later, he is surprised to see the black car chasing them. He turns into the first street he sees and escapes from them. His wife is surprised and asks him, why are you driving so fast? He tells her that he's excited to travel and wants to get there quickly. But when he finds them still chasing him, he realizes they have placed a tracking device in the car. He lies to his family and tells them that he needs to go to his work to get his salary and have money for the trip. There, he lifts the car, and his wife asks him, why are you lifting the car? He tells her, we are traveling, and I must change the oil before we move. He actually finds the tracking device, takes it, and puts it in his colleague's car, who he can't stand. Afterward, he takes them and gets onto the road. When he finds his children taking pictures with their phones and uploading their photos to the internet, he fears the gang will know his location. He takes their phones and throws them out the window. They all stare in shock, except for the little rascal. He convinces them that this trip is a family one and a chance for them to bond. They were all annoyed with him, but after a while, they realized Dan was right because they felt happy and there was no headache. They started laughing and dancing to songs, and everything was great and perfect. At that time, McCaffrey was at Dan's house and was very upset. We learned that Dan used to work with McCaffrey long ago, and that he was a contract killer and one of the strongest fighters in McCaffrey's assassination team. But ever since he met Jessie and married her, he defected from them and quit the job, deciding to live his life as a normal husband in peace and away from trouble. But McCaffrey wanted revenge on him. Because Dan was a very professional and smart person, he never used any credit cards that could be traced. Anything he bought with cash. This was, of course, so no one could locate him. McCaffrey orders his men to monitor all the roads so they can find him as quickly as possible. Indeed, his men find Dan and see him, and he also sees them. He plays music in his wife's and children's headphones while they are sleeping, and the chase begins with motorcycles behind him. Because Dan is the professional, he manages to eliminate everyone who is chasing him, one after the other, while his wife and family are sound asleep. Only little Max was happy and cheering him on. He manages to finish them off and continues the journey. The next day, they wake up and find themselves in Iowa City, and they couldn't believe he drove all night. Nina then realizes that she is close to the university where her lover is, and she asks them if she can go see him and say hello. But Jessie refuses, so Nina argues with her and tells her she wants to see the city and university atmosphere. So Dan takes them, and they walk around the city. This is, of course, to avoid anyone tracking them. They were all very happy and excited. After a while, some young men challenge Jessie to do a flip and stand on a barrel while drinking alcohol. Jessie turns out to be very athletic and manages to win the challenge. Nina records all the beautiful moments happening, and Dan is shocked. Jessie tells him that before she married him, she used to play high jump and many other sports. But ever since she sustained a leg injury, she retired from playing and started working as a physical therapist. Afterward, they take a tour of the university. Dan notices one of McCaffrey's men, so he lets them continue the tour alone and goes to fight with him. They destroy the lab on top of each other until Dan manages to finish him off in the end. He rushes to get his family and leave the place. But he is surprised that Nina did what was on her mind and went to greet her boyfriend. He didn't know at the time that Nina would be shocked because she caught her boyfriend cheating on her with another woman. She returns to her father and mother, crying. Dan goes to her and tells her to go back and get her revenge on him. He teaches her a move to mark him with. Nina actually goes back and vents her anger on him and tells him, "Smile, so your picture turns out nice." She takes it as a souvenir. She returns to her father and mother, happy. Jessie wants to know what Dan told her. After that, they continue their journey. Jessie notices the broken car mirror. He tells her, "A good car broke it last night while you were sleeping, right, Max?" Max agrees. After a while, they arrive at a roadside hotel and sleep there. The next day, Dan was practicing his speech because he wanted to confess to Jessie. His son Kyle sits with him and tries to convince him that he is a professional video game player and that all the people who follow him love him and know him by the name Killboy in the game. He makes a deal with his father that they will enter a challenge and play against each other. If he wins, Dan will allow him to play video games freely, and if he loses, he will listen to him. Dan agrees, and they both play together. Kyle thought his father was amateur in the game and would win easily, but he was surprised by his high fighting skills and even easily wins against him. Kyle tells him, "You're cheating. How did you win against me?" Dan tells him that he used to train when he was young and tells him that he is also a professional and has a great future. Kyle is happy with his words, and they leave, delighted. Afterward, Dan takes his family and continues their journey. At night, they arrive at the hotel he booked into, and he surprises them by reserving a very large suite for them. They are happy and can't believe it. Dan leaves them to settle in and goes down to meet his friend. He gives him the money and takes the new passports from him. His friend asks him, "Did you tell your family the truth?" He says, "No, I haven't told them yet. I'll invite Jessie to dinner tonight and tell her everything." His friend suggests a Chinese restaurant in the hotel where he can invite Jessie. He asks him, "Why a Chinese restaurant?" His friend says, "Because it doesn't have knives for her to stab you with, only chopsticks." Dan laughs and goes up to get ready for dinner. He prepares his pistol and knife to take with him for any emergency. He asks his children not to leave the suite until they return. They agree, but as soon as they leave, they also get dressed and go down to a video game arcade. There, Kyle learns there is a tournament and that all the professional players will be playing in it. They suggest Kyle play with them since he is famous and professional. Kyle, of course, agrees without thinking. As for Dan, every time he tries to confess to his wife, the annoying waiter comes to put the food down. Dan tells him, "For the sake of your father, let me say 2 words." The waiter apologizes in French. Dan replies to him, "No worries," in French. Jessie is surprised that he speaks French fluently and tells him, "I didn't know you spoke French." Dan confesses his entire truth to her while speaking French. She tells him, "Wow, you are so cool, but I don't understand anything you're saying." He tells her, "No worries," and gets up to call his children to check on them, but no one answers. Dan gets worried and takes Jessie back to the suite. She goes in to check on her children and finds them sleeping. She assures Dan that they are fine and calms him down, but she doesn't know that they are downstairs, having a great time. Kyle manages to defeat the team he was playing against. A woman is watching him at the time. Dan is surprised that he has been caught and his location is known. He acts quickly and manages to finish them off easily, but he finds one of them threatening him with Jessie. He says she knows nothing and asks him to leave her and take him instead. Jessie was, of course, shocked. The man tells him that he will kill him first, then his wife, and then he will call the rest of his team at the arcade to finish off his children. Dan realizes that his children are not there. In a flash, he finishes the man off with his knife, and Jessie is stunned. He tells her that he will explain everything, but first, they need to save their children. She, like any local woman, started screaming at him and telling him, "Where is Dan, my husband? You are not Dan." He grabs her and tells her, "Later." When they reach their children, he tells them the truth, that before he married their mother, he was a contract killer in an assassination squad. His children are shocked, and Kyle tells him, "No offense, but you are the most cowardly person on this planet. A contract killer? What are you talking about? Say something believable." Suddenly, they hear gunfire directed at them. Dan quickly grabs them, and they run. He tells them, "Wait here, and I'll be right back." They all stare in shock when they see their father flipping around the place and finishing off everyone chasing them. Afterward, he takes them away from the area quickly. There, he tells them that his real name is Sean and that his mother died when he was 4 years old. His father was a professional working in the Air Force and treated him very violently. As soon as he turned 18, he sent him to the army. There, he learned that he inherited his father's genes and trained in all types of combat, becoming professional and violent like his father. One day, he met a man named McCaffrey, who was a former Air Force agent and was very impressed with him. I considered him like my father, so he included me in his team and trained me more and more. The mission of this assassination squad was to eliminate any enemies of the state, such as internationally wanted criminals and global drug traffickers. Kyle tells him, "Seriously, you didn't want me to play those fake video games and deprived me my whole life of the thing I love most because it contained violence. And you turned out to be the father of all violence and a killer with no mercy." Dan tells him, "I was afraid for you. Besides, I thought I was serving my country, but I was surprised that McCaffrey was using us for missions for the highest bidder. That's why I left them and retired." Jessie tells him, 18 years, man. I've been living with you and knew nothing about you. Ah, that's why you didn't like going out or traveling. And you even banned your children from social media. I turned out to be a clueless fool, sleeping soundly, you sweetheart. Nina asks him, so what are we going to do now that they know our location? He tells her, I've arranged everything. And he gives them the new passports he made for them. He informs them that they will not be returning to their country again. Kyle gets angry and throws the passport in his face. Nina tells him, you have no right to ask anything of us. And she also throws the passport in his face. When he looks at Jesse, she tells him, come here, man. So you didn't love me or your children? You were just hiding with us. In the end, I turned out to be married to James Bond, and I didn't know. He tells her, no, my darling, I really love you and changed for you. She tells him, shut up. And she also throws the passport in his face and tells him, this morning, I'm taking your children, and you won't see our faces again. She goes out to call Gwen and asks her to help her. Indeed, the next morning, no amount of pleading works. When women set their minds on something, they execute it. A little later, Gwen arrives, and Jesse is surprised that she has prepared a private jet for her and her children. On the plane, Jesse thanks her and tells her that she had a fight with her husband. Gwen tells her, I also fought with my lover before, and I understand how you feel. But the difference is that my lover suddenly decided to leave me. And guess what? He went and married another woman and had children with her. But I managed to reach her, and we became friends. And I even managed to trick her and make her fall into my trap. Jesse is confused and realizes that Gwen is talking about her. She gets nervous and tells her, I forgot something in the taxi. I'm going down to get it. But she is surprised to find McCaffrey in front of her. A little later, a call reaches Dan, and he finds McCaffrey on the line. He informs him that his family is with him, and if he wants them, he should come to the address he will send him. Dan actually goes to the address and finds an old hotel. There, Dan's family learns that McCaffrey is Dan's real father, and they are shocked. McCaffrey tells him that he looked for him everywhere, and that ever since he left him, he felt betrayed and decided to kill him. But he changed his mind when he saw him kill all the men he sent after him, and he felt proud of him and that he is still professional and talented. That's why I decided to forgive you and bring you back to work with me. But Dan refuses and tells him that's not happening, and that he has changed for his family. McCaffrey tells him, suit yourself, and he orders Gwen to finish off Jesse. Dan tells him, wait, and he is forced to agree to his offer to save his family. He tells him that he will execute everything he wants from him. McCaffrey tells him, I like that boy. His men release his family and return them to their country. As they are leaving, he tells them that he loves them and asks them to forgive him. Nina is upset that they are leaving her father, and she tells her mother that her father is doing all this to save them and that they must do something and help him. Her mother asks her, what should we do with that monkey with us? Nina tells her, we have to do something. She gives Jesse an idea, and while changing Max's diaper, she puts it on the monkey's head and drops it from the top of the hotel. With that brilliant move, they form a rescue team and decide to save Dan. When they return, they find Gwen alone with him and wanting him back. Jesse says, oh, you sly dog. You bought into that quickly. Suddenly, Dan makes a simple move that knocks Gwen unconscious. Jesse tells him, I almost wronged you, father of my children. Afterward, Dan gives Kyle a headset and has him use the drone. He tells him, you are my eyes now, and asks him to find the locations of his father's men and inform him immediately so he can eliminate them. Dan asks them to go hide on the roof, and he goes down to finish off his father's men. McCaffrey then feels that something is wrong and sends his men back to look for Dan. Kyle informs his father of the locations of all the men, and Dan takes care of them, going above and beyond, finishing them off one after the other. Gwen then wakes up and goes up to the roof to finish off Jesse. Jesse fights with her, but Gwen has high combat skills and dominates her on the rooftop floor. Nina tries to push her, but Gwen catches herself at the last moment and decides to finish them off. But Jesse gets up, grabs a stick, and decides to use her high jump skills, and Gwen falls onto her face. Gwen doesn't give up and grabs the stick again. Jesse stabs her with it and tells her, how do you like that move? With this, she finishes her off and saves her children. As for Dan, he was fighting with his father, but the old man was incredibly strong. He knocks Dan down and is about to finish him off with his gun. Nina comes and tells him, you're my grandfather, and we are one family. She talks to him about the family ties between them and tells him, I see you as my grandfather, not a cold-hearted person, and we can forget our differences and live together as a happy family. He tells her, "That's not happening. Do you think your words will work on me?" She tells him, "No, I was just giving my dad some time." Dan hits him, and he falls unconscious. Max laughs, and they all rush to him. Finally, as expected, the police arrive at the end. 6 months later, we learn from the news that the police arrested McCaffrey and that the journalist Nina helped the police in his arrest. We learn that Dan opened a private security company, and he trains people there. As for Jessie, she returned to her job as an athletic trainer in track and field. Kyle can now play his favorite game without fear of his father. After 3 years, we see in the news the death of McCaffrey in prison. This, my friend, was the leader of a huge assassination squad and also the father of our hero Dan. The important thing is, we see Jessie, Dan's wife, sitting in the hotel bar. Her husband, Dan, calls her and tells her to put her hand under the bar and take the key she has. He tells her to go up to room number 556 and warns her to avoid any cameras on her way. Jessie has become a clever one and executes his words exactly. At that time, Dan was climbing the outside of the hotel. A clumsy man sees him and tells him, "Stop right there, master." He tells his wife to open the box on the bed. When she does, she finds a necklace inside. Just as she asks him where he is, he performs a controlled drop and enters through the balcony. We learn that he prepared a surprise for her so they could spend some time alone, away from the children's noise. When she asks him what he thinks of the necklace, she is surprised when she finds it has disappeared. She asks him, "How did you do that, player?" He puts the necklace on her and tells her, "You know your lover's hands are lighter than a feather." Just as they are about to be intimate, their son Kyle calls them. Dan answers him and tells him, "What do you want, destroyer of sweet moments?" He tells him that Max is sick and made a mess in his place. Dan tells him, "Handle it, and we'll be there in 2 hours." Jessie looks at him, so he tells Kyle, "Okay, let's make it half an hour or 10 minutes. It can't be less than that." But Jessie insists on going to their children. Dan gets annoyed and tells his inner devil to step aside. 2 days later, we see them all together in the car, and they were happy and singing. And everything was great with them. They go to visit Jessie's family to celebrate the holiday together. And they are all gathered there, except for their daughter Nina, because she is studying in London. But just as they are about to eat, she calls them via video call and celebrates with them. When her grandfather tells her that the man named McCaffrey, whom she wrote an article about before, died, Nina and Dan get upset. Jessie changes the subject so it doesn't turn into a drama. Jessie apologizes to Dan in the kitchen because her father brought up his father. But Dan tells her that he is not upset because that man wanted to kill them. "Don't worry about me because no one knows he is my father." At night, when Nina talks to her mother, she learns from her that she got a great offer and that she will become the leader of the women's team in Ohio State. Nina is very happy for her. But Jessie tells her, "Don't be too happy. I haven't told Dan yet. Honestly, I don't know how to bring it up, especially since we have finally settled down here and Dan has fixed his life at work." Nina encourages her and tells her that this is her life's dream, and she must talk to Dan. She tells her, "Okay, I'll think of something and try to talk to him." She asks her, "When are you coming to spend New Year's Eve with us?" She tells her, "It's very difficult for me to be there with you." A week passes, and Dan was preparing the Christmas tree to celebrate with them all. But Dan is surprised when Jessie tells him that Nina won't be attending with them. He gets very upset because he loves gathering his family around him on that day. The next day, Dan goes to his security company and is very happy when the secretary tells him that a bank from London contacted them and wants him to go there to discover their vulnerabilities and find out if the bank is well secured. Dan thinks, "Perfect, nothing better than this." He decides to go. Indeed, he takes his whole family in the car, and in a flash, they head to the airport and travel to Nina. They had agreed with their daughter that they would meet her at the hotel, but Dan wanted to surprise her. As soon as they arrive in London, he goes to her student housing. Nina is surprised by them and asks them, "What brought you here?" They go inside and tell her, "We wanted to surprise you." But they are all surprised when they learn that Nina has brought her boyfriend home. Nina quickly calms her father down and tells him that this is her boyfriend, Omar. Dan gets angry and can't stand Omar, especially when he called him dad. He tells him, "No dad, no mom. How old are you anyway?" Omar tells him, 44. Dan gets more upset and tells him, "Don't you think you're too old for her?" Omar tells him, "Dad, love knows no age." Jessie intervenes and is very happy with him. She tells Nina, At least he's better than your cheating boyfriend in the first part. Dan takes them, and they go for a walk together. Nina keeps telling them about Omar and how much of a gentleman he is and how much he looks out for her. But Dan couldn't stand him and didn't like him at all. As for Kyle and Max, they really liked Omar, especially Max when he learned that he is a professional in parkour and saw him jumping around like a monkey in front of him. He tried to imitate him, but he took a tumble on his face. Dan runs to him and helps him up. Omar apologizes to him and tells him it's not his fault. Dan tells him, "Just keep your hands off him or I'll break them." Jesse quickly takes him aside and tries to calm him down. They decide to go back to the hotel to rest. The next day, Nina goes to their hotel, but Dan tells them that he is going to a work meeting at the bank. He gives them a restaurant invitation and tells them that he will meet them there. Before leaving, he emphasizes to Nina not to bring the annoying guy named Omar to the restaurant with her. He goes to the bank and tries to scout the vulnerabilities there. Just as he is about to ask for the bank manager, the manager comes to him himself. He introduces himself and tells him, "What do you think of the bank? The security system is very high, and I don't think anyone can steal from it." But Dan shocks him and tells him, "No, it's normal. Anyone can steal from it." The bank manager tells him, "How so? Show me." Dan goes in front of him and opens door after door easily, sometimes with a device he has, and sometimes with a key. The bank manager is surprised by his skills until they reach the safe deposit box room. He tells him, "Show me your skills here." Dan tells him, "Okay." While they are on their way, they meet an employee who asks them where they are going. But Dan quickly grabs him and tells him that people outside are asking for him. Without either of them noticing, he manages to steal his ID card and uses it to open the safe deposit box room. He tells the bank manager, "Go ahead." Meanwhile, Jessie is in her room getting ready. Suddenly, someone knocks on her door, and when she opens it, she is shocked. As soon as Dan enters the safe deposit box room, he attacks the bank manager and tells him that the employee they met a little while ago didn't know him, and those rough hands are not the hands of a bank manager. "Tell me, who are you and what do you want?" He tells him, "I'll take out my phone and you'll know everything from it." The surprise is that Dan learns they have kidnapped Jessie, and they threaten the bank manager that if he doesn't open box number 101, they will kill her. He actually complies, and the man orders him to open the box inside. Dan sees a strange-looking key. The manager asks him, "Don't you recognize this key, Sean?" Dan is shocked because the man called him by his real name and asks him, "Who are you and what do you want?" The man pulls a photo from his pocket and tells him, "This is your father, McCaffrey, and you are with him, but who is the child with you?" Dan tells him that it's the maid's son. The man tells him, "Very well, I am the maid's son, and my name is Finn." Dan is shocked when he hears this. Finn tells him, "Don't be so shocked. You haven't heard the big surprise yet." He tells him that he is his brother, but their father, McCaffrey, didn't want to admit me because I am the maid's son. He tells him that he will make him pay for everything that happened to him long ago. But now, I'm just going to take the key and leave, and you'll bear the charge of breaking into the bank and stealing from it. He threatens him that if he mentions him to the police, he will expose him and let the police know that he is Sean McCaffrey, the contract killer the police are looking for everywhere. In other words, you will be silenced in prison while your wife dies. Dan asks him, "And how will you get out of here, handsome?" He tells him, "It's very easy. You will get us out." A little later, Dan walks out in front of people, holding him and threatening him with a weapon. The employee quickly presses the alarm. Dan manages to get him out of the bank and asks him, "Where is my wife?" The car arrives, and Jessie gets out of it, but they have tied a gun to her hand. In a second, Finn gets into the car and speeds off before the police arrive. Dan realizes he has to act fast. He takes Jessie and escapes from the area, running and hiding in several places. Finn is then surprised that the box is empty and that Dan took the key. He orders his men to go back to Dan immediately. At the same time, Dan calls Kyle and tells him to throw away their phones and meet them right now. Kyle asks him, "Are you kidding us or what?" He calls Nina and informs her that they are in danger, and he tells her to gather her siblings and meet them right now. She quickly complies and throws away all their phones. Dan also throws away his and Jessie's phones. He quickly takes them and they escape, but Finn sees them and decides to chase them. But they escape from him when the road barriers stop Finn and his men. Jessie then gets rid of the weapon in her hand, and they all board the bus to escape from the area. Dan begins to tell them that Finn is their uncle, but he didn't know he was his brother. As he is about to continue speaking, he finds Finn boarding the bus and Finn asks him, "Where is the key?" He tells him, "That's not happening. My family's lives depend on this key." Suddenly, Finn attacks him and knocks the weapon out of his hand. They go up to the upper floor. With a hit here and 2 hits there, Finn pulls out a knife. When Jesse tries to help Dan, Finn grabs her and threatens him that if he doesn't give him the key, he will finish her off. Dan throws the key, and it falls into a bicycle basket. Finn gets angry and quickly goes after it. They all quickly disappear from the place and go to sit in a Chinese restaurant. Dan meets his friend there and gives him a bag of money. When Kyle tells him to call the police, Dan tells them it won't work and that if he does, the police will come and arrest them because they think he robbed the bank. In other words, "We can't stay in London for another second." Kyle tells him, "Great. Every time I meet a relative of yours, I find a gang leader or a contract killer." Dan tells him, "Say what you want. The important thing is we leave here right now." Omar tells them, "I'm with you, Dad." Dan gets angry when he hears his voice and tells him, "Who said you were coming with us?" Nina intervenes and tells him, "I'm going with him wherever he goes." Dan nearly blows a fuse and is forced to take him with them. Finn then travels to Paris and returns to the house where he grew up long ago. There, he meets his father's head servant, whose name is Vikram. Finn shows him the key he has. Vikram is shocked when he sees the key with him and allows him to enter. We learn then that whoever has McCaffrey's key has the right to continue his father's legacy. Finn enters the house, happy that he has finally achieved what he wanted. He goes to his father's desk and puts the key in the desk slot. Suddenly, giant screens appear all around him, showing all the contract killers his father used in his operations. He also finds a lot of money in his father's accounts, and all of this is now his right. At the same time, Dan and his family, with Omar, are going to Paris by boat to stop his brother because he now has all the evidence that proves Dan is Sean McCaffrey. Jessie is shocked when she learns from Dan that he spent his childhood in Paris, and she asks him, "What else are you hiding from me, brother?" "Confess." He tells her, "There's nothing else at all. I am a blank page in front of you now." His children blame him because of his past and that they are now having to run away from one country to another every year. He promises them that he will solve everything and they won't have to run away again. He takes them and they board a truck carrying wood to enter the country. When they ask him where they are going, he tells them, "To a place your mother won't like." He takes them to his old girlfriend, but she turned out to be very old indeed. She is surprised when she sees him and asks him, "Where have you been, you rascal?" Jessie is annoyed and tells her, "He married me. And were you looking for him, sweetie?" She tells them, come in, the world must be looking for you." And she shows her a picture in the newspaper that calls her a thief. Nina sees it and tells her, "You look like a bombshell, Mom." The quirky woman makes them a soup that you can't tell if it's soup or a grandmother's stew. But they all love it, so much so that they finish it all and wanted to eat her too. Dan asks her to send a message to his father's computer servant. He informs her that his illegitimate brother took his father's place because he refused to follow his father's path long ago and made a beautiful family, as she can see. A little later, Dan talks to Jessie and tells her that his brother has agreed to meet him. When she expresses fear for him, he tells her, "Don't worry, I'll meet him in a well-secured museum, meaning it's impossible for him to enter with a weapon." He tells her that he will talk to him. Perhaps he can fix the relationship between them. He actually goes to meet him and tells him that he left his father's path long ago and that he is now living his own life and has a big family and doesn't want any trouble or anything from him. Finn tells him, "That won't work with me, Daddy's favorite kitten." Dan punches him in the face and tells him, "I don't like that word. I left my job with my father for my family, and nothing in the world is more important than my family now." Finn tells him, "I'm family too." Dan tells him that he didn't know he had a brother, and if he had known a long time ago, he would have been a brother to him. He tells him that it's not too late and that they can be one family. He informs him that he doesn't want any of McCaffrey's money or any of his inheritance. Finn tells him, "So you want us to send flowers to each other on holidays and stuff? That's not happening. You want me to leave all my father's wealth and power just to be with you and your family? Forget it, man." Dan tells him, "Okay, look here, man. I've been talking to you all this time as Dan, the loyal husband and the kind father." He threatens him that if he doesn't back down from what he's doing, he will show him who Sean McCaffrey is, the contract killer who was raised by his father. He leaves him and walks away. Of course, this makes Finn furious. He gathers all the contract killers who used to work with his father and tells them that whoever finishes off Sean will get triple their salary. They are impressed by the offer and decide to execute his words. Dan was preparing himself. Jesse enters and realizes that his brother rejected the offer. When Dan senses that she is upset, he takes them to get some fresh air. They spend the night having fun together. Afterward, they return to his old girlfriend's house. After everyone falls asleep, she calls him to have a drink together. He tells her that he loves his family very much and that he moved away from his father's path to keep them safe. She tells him drunkenly that his family is very nice and they even liked her soup. Honestly, I want to confess something to you. I sold you out to Finn because he made a great offer for whoever hands you over to him. She tells him that life has become very difficult and she needed money to feed her cats. He asks her, "What did you do, you crazy woman?" She informs him that she put a sedative in his drink and Finn's men are on the way. Dan feels like he's about to pass out. He quickly gets up to wake his wife and children and tells them, "We have to leave here right now." But suddenly he takes the table and sits on the floor. Jesse realizes that his old girlfriend sold them out, but her conscience woke up and she went back on her word. She decides to help them and gives them her car key so they can escape with it. But as they get into the car, they find it is very old. They hear the sound of Finn's men arriving outside the house. They get into it, and Jesse tells her son, "Let's get out of here quickly." He suddenly backs up instead of going forward. She tells him, "This is not the time. Do the right thing." He drives quickly and crashes through the garage door. When the gang sees them, they chase them relentlessly. Although Kyle was not driving well, Jesse helped him and they managed to escape from them. The next morning, Dan tells her, "Enough of this hardship. As long as I am in your lives, you will be in danger." But Nina tells him from a distance, "You are wrong. Just as we got through the old situation, we can get through this now." Dan is happy with her words. They think of a plan to finish the matter. They go near McCaffrey's house. Dan tells them that he used to live here a long time ago. They are all shocked when they see how luxurious the house is. Kyle tells him, "You left all this for us?" Dan informs them that they are the most precious thing in his life. The important thing is, they agree on the plan. He tells Jesse, "If the plan fails at any point, don't hesitate for a second. Take them and escape." The plan was for him and Omar to enter the house, and he would take a flash drive from his son, Kyle. This flash drive will erase all the evidence that proves he is Sean McCaffrey. To distract Finn's surveillance men, they had to create a disturbance in the street. Nina tells him that Omar will take care of it. They all agree on the plan and start implementing it. Dan and Omar, with some parkour moves, manage to climb onto the roof of the house. They change the cameras directions so Finn won't see them until they reach a contract killer named Harry, who is securing the roof from above. With a clever move from Omar, he manages to distract Harry. Dan comes from behind him, hits him, and knocks him out on the ground. When Finn sees the cameras have been changed, he asks Harry if everything is okay with him. Kyle quickly uses Harry's voice, which they manage to record, and has him reply to Finn, assuring him that everything is fine. At the same time, the people who work for Omar arrive and start a demonstration in front of McCaffrey's house. When the police arrive, they grab Nina and ask her, "Are you the one who organized this demonstration?" She tells them, "I'm just a normal person." Omar sees her from afar, gets onto the car, and breaks it. The police leave her and go to arrest him. Nina sends him a kiss because he saved her. Dan enters McCaffrey's house through a secret window he used to enter and exit when he was young. He goes in to look at his memories, but he is surprised to find Finn behind him. Finn tells him, "Did you forget that you told me about the secret window when we were young?" Just as he is about to finish him off, Vikram tells him, "Don't kill him here. We are used to doing these things in another place." Before Dan leaves with them, he throws the flash drive Kyle gave him. But while they are taking him, Finn snatches the headset and realizes that his wife and children are with him. He turns the camera to Dan and tells them to say goodbye to him. They fear for him and didn't know what to do. But Kyle informs her that the flash drive is not moving, which means Dan intended to do this. Jesse decides then to go in and save him. At the same time, Vikram also helps Dan and opens the grate before Finn shoots him. Finn gets angry at him and shoots him, and his men go to look for Dan everywhere in the place. Jesse is standing on the roof of a nearby building and is preparing to jump onto the roof of McCaffrey's house. She performs a bomb jump and leaps to the other side. She can't believe it herself. She goes in, takes the flash drive from the ground, and goes to the main office. She does everything Kyle told her to do and puts the flash drive in the device. And it does the rest and more. But Kyle warns her when he sees the cameras that a female contract killer is coming towards her. She quickly hides in the closet, but the killer knows where she is. Just as she is about to finish her off with the sword, Jesse kicks the door in her face. A fierce fight breaks out between them, but Jesse turns out to be a ninja and dodges all her hits and hits her in a sensitive spot. Meanwhile, Dan was finishing off the rest of Finn's men, one after the other downstairs. The fighting was both upstairs and downstairs, and both were going all out until Jesse manages to hit the killer right and left and knocks her to the floor. At that moment, Nina sees one of Finn's contract killers coming towards them. Jesse hears them and tells them that she is coming to them quickly, but they have already taken off and escaped from the car. Jesse keeps looking for them until she manages to reach them and hits the killer chasing them below the belt, making him forget about having children and everything. Finn is shocked when he finds everything destroyed and all the money has been completely wiped from his account. He gets angry and keeps breaking everything until damns to him and laughs at him and tells him that his son managed to defeat someone like him. Finn gets even angrier and attacks Dan. They both get into a fierce fight and keep hitting each other until they break the whole house down around them. But Dan dominates him, moving him left and right, up and down, and breaks his bones. In a second, he ties him with a rope and throws him, hanging him like that. When Dan goes down to his family, the police surround them and arrest them. They all gather in a group and are thrown into the police car. But they are surprised to see luxurious cars arriving, and Omar and another man get out of them. Dan is shocked when he learns that Omar's father is the chief of police and tells him, "Man, why didn't you tell me earlier?" Omar tells him, "Did you give me a chance throughout the whole movie?" They all laugh. Dan tells him, "I love you now. You are one of the family. Feel free to call me Dad." Finn is, of course, arrested. Jesse then tells him about the job offer she got. Dan agrees, and they are all happy. 11 months later, they are in a new house in Ohio State, and they are all together. Dan video calls Omar and tells him that he is a very honorable man and is waiting for him to attend Christmas with them. Before hanging up, he tells him, "Say Dad once," and he hangs up with him. He goes to his children and tells them, "Take care of Max because I want your mother for a secret word." In the final scene of the film, Dan goes to visit his brother, Finn, in prison. He brings him the jacket he always wanted and sits down next to him, and they play cards together. We understand that they have become very close. The film ends. Let's meet for a new recap. Thank you for watching.